covering more of a analytics business value, which is probably indirect. I distinguish here two types. So the analytics business value is around helping business users and systems to make right decisions using data. So for example, using the fraud model to freeze some of the customers or to decide which ones to review. Whereas more direct from data extraction is through getting paid for data or getting paid for insight. So one of the examples would be like payment intelligence with smart data science products that we provide the customers, but they actually pay for those features. I'm going to try something dangerous. So I know we talk about business value, but sometimes I know we ourselves find it difficult to quantify or struggle to articulate the value to the business. But the thing that I wanted to try is with many of you here, I cannot really see faces. So I'm going to try Zoom reactions. So if any of these statements resonate with you, please go to the bottom of your Zoom menu and then click on the reactions and respond. I can see some of you definitely experienced similar pain points. So that's a cue for taking a closer look at self-service. So this comes this amazing thing that hopefully can help all of our jobs and make our life better, right? The idea behind self-service, when I feel like I'm a data bottleneck as a data analyst, I'm not being able to deliver the best value. What self-serve does is makes everybody a little bit of an analyst. So instead of analytics being confined to just the data team, people start extracting insight themselves with a little bit of help from BI, analyst, data scientist, whatever it is. So there's a shorter time to insight. There is kind of more data democratization because there is no SQL skill required in order to start looking at the data. It encourages self-reliance and therefore frees up a lot of resources and enables to scale the organization without scaling the data team at the same rate, because that wouldn't be feasible in many organizations. It encourages efficiency because you will generate repeatable output as opposed to sort of spreadsheet that you have to repivot every bit of analysis if you decide to look at something in a different segment or slice it in a different way. And it encourages reliability through promoting a single source of truth. But ideally, everybody becomes a little bit of an analyst. There is wide access to data. Everybody's happy. The real question you're going to ask me is, will I drive myself out of the job? And my answer is hopefully not. Hopefully, instead, what you will be able to do is actually focus on high value generating activities and not on providing yet another vanity metric to the business user. There are some caveats, of course, to the idea and the notion of self-serve. So those are very real. We do see those sort of on a regular basis. So one of them is but there is a potential for misinterpretations and misinterpretation of the data. If people are producing their own metrics, they can, as a result, make wrong decisions. And I think this is one of the biggest risks. So you need to address that by either curating your resources or being very, very clear in your metric definitions and sort of what your data points mean, so that their scope, it becomes more dummy proof. The scope for making the margin for making an error is actually lowered. There's obviously concerns around the security and privacy risk. On their own, if everybody has access to data, there is a possibility that people will misuse it or do so either accidentally or on purpose. So the way to tackle that is to put security and privacy by design and focus on preventing rather than kind of fixing after the fact. Another risk that was a bit of a learning is that not everyone will benefit equally. what we notice is that the company is not at the same state throughout its various organizational functions. Some people are very comfortable traversing various data, numbers, data visualizations, happy to nip in and build their own visualizations, whereas others are more reluctant to use them. We've recently done a survey of Looker users, and Looker is our BI tool, and people say that some people that find it difficult to even get started despite being provided with access. And the final, last but not least, is there just too many dashboards. It becomes a wild west of content, and it's kind of difficult to see what is good and what is less good. And the way to go around that, and that's something we're kind of not yet nailed, is to make it clear where the resources, where are the sort of high quality resources that have been curated and validated and tested versus something that I've created on the fly yesterday just to check something, and it might not sort of stand the test of time. So there are caveats, but overall, self-serve is a desirable goal, and you can kind of mitigate the risks if you know what they are. Many of you will have seen at least the bottom left chart here on the slide. So the idea is that what is the business value? I think it really correlates to maturity. So you can start targeting that. And maturity, like in all of these charts, you won't see the detail, but the idea is that the further towards the right, i.e. the more mature you become in your data capability and data usage across the organization, the higher value you're able to extract. Although there is a caveat that it is more difficult to get there. Just to zoom in on one of the slides, one of the previous diagrams is that, you look at BI adoption, replace BI with analytics or insight, and you'll see that not everybody will uniformly adopt. There will be kind of tranches of users who are more power users, some who are more casual, and like the value comes when more and more people adopt your analytical tools and your analytical processes and are able to drive decisions from the data that you provide. So far, I've been talking mostly about value, but there is kind of a concept of ROI because BI is an investment and analytics is an investment. There is a cost to it, and the ROI is the difference between the value that you generate minus the cost. So I'm not going to talk about the cost very much here, but generally the higher the value, the higher the ROI. But hopefully over time, as you scale, the cost per employee or cost sort of per unit of investment will reduce. So where are those learnings that I promised you? So like, which tools should I be using? What are the tips and tricks? I think a lot of people focus or jump straight to technology, whereas I kind of like to think of it in sort of this circle or cycle of people, processes, and technology. So I'll use this as a framework to rely upon in the next slides. So I think one learning was really choose your tech well. I won't dwell on this. This is a very, very simplified, high-level version of our tech stack. And we have our own kind of GoCardless database, which in previous jobs as an analyst, I often had to just plug in directly to the production systems, which I don't think is very safe or the right way of doing it. It can slow down the actual product if you do that, and there are certain risks to do that. But here we have the kind of a data warehouse copy of that, which we apply business logic to. We have some Google Sheets. We have sort of a number of third-party resources that we pull in via Stitch. We transform this data using the DBT, and we sort of land everything in BigQuery. So there are a lot of data sets, and we put Looker on top of BigQuery. So this last bit is our Looker, and this is where I will focus on the next. Looker has been a big win for GoCardless from the data perspective, really allowed for real democratization. Disclaimer that Looker is not paying me to do this, I wish. And I know there are pie charts and donut charts in here, I'm sorry. So why, to me, Looker was a win for GoCardless? I think engineering generally has a good process and controls around their development, which is something I haven't seen in many of the past jobs as an analyst. Whereas Looker allows you to version control your code, to be able to roll back if you've generated a bug on the analytics side, and know who did what and when, which is extremely useful to debug later on. It's a cloud-based tool and allows access from anywhere. I can share a URL with my colleague, and they will instantly be looking at the same data I'm looking. Entirely focused on the content, there is an explore layer, which is kind of allowing users to see the sets of dimensions and measures and explore data for themselves, so real self-serve, with a bit of curation from us if required, or they can just plug into their data set and start exploring without us at all. That's the hub and spoke architecture. So the hub is the things that BI team curates and focuses on, which are just kind of key data points, key metrics. And the spoke is, if you are data literate and have an interesting data source you want to explore, let's say Slack data, but we don't have it at the moment, you can plug in and then work in your spoke, and when it becomes really good, you can pull it back into the hub. Allows for this flexible development. Looker has its own modeling business logic tool using LookML, which has been useful for people to be able to see what the business logic is without having to know SQL itself. It's a meta layer and has an API. I'm not going to dwell on this, but most importantly, I think we give it to everyone. We give it to everyone in GC who wants it. In the previous analyst roles that I've seen, usually the exploration would be a privilege rather than the right. So only a handful of people would be able to get access to the information they need, and that those handful of people will then generate insight onto the people that need it, the decision makers, which is a bottleneck situation we've talked about. On the people side, that wouldn't have been possible without getting the leadership buy-in. The more I think about it now, the more for granted we would have taken it, but it was very important to get the buy-in from the leadership, because you're not spending hours justifying your existence as a team. You have data as by design in many of the processes. And what I mean by that is, when people start a new sort of product development objective or OKR, one of the checklist items that says how would you measure your success? And you kind of have to think about it upfront before you even start plotting what that OKR is all about. And also data tools, data people, they're not cheap. Executive sponsorship allows you actually to approve those investments. They realize the future value of the current investments. You also need to ensure that there is a strong data leadership team, first of all, because that will ensure the seat at the table at the important key conversations, so you know what's going on within the business or what the key stakeholders need. You're able to influence some of the decisions without just being kind of the downstream person in the process. It allows to create vision and mission that focuses the team and help sort of hire and with people retention as well. It helps protect the team. In our case, that we really took our time to build the foundation because we believe that's the right thing to do. Whereas it wouldn't have been possible without the strong data leadership, where we would be kind of dragged into various scenarios or whatever is the big question of the day. And it also drives thought leadership, and I will go on to that a little bit later. Continuing on the people topic, first you need to focus on building an excellent team. I'm proud to say that I think we have an excellent team, excellent BI team. Um, we, we've tried different team structures. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer here. That's the key. Like, but whatever makes sense for your organization at a point in time where you are, like, what's your maturity? Do you want to keep everyone centralized at the start, or does it make sense to have more of an embedded, as we say, or federated model where like each analyst supports a particular business function? You should be selective in your hiring if you can afford the time to be picky, but also focus on the right capability. So initially we would be hiring people who can do a little bit of everything across the analytical spectrum. They can do their own analysis, they can run their queries, they can check why the query may have failed in Airflow if needed. They can do a little bit of modeling in Python if required. So you kind of get a unicorn. You get this sort of people with a little bit of specialization, but ability to kind of traverse the spectrum of analytical tasks. That's the right thing for like an early to mid stage. But I think maybe at some point you start looking for more specialized people, extremely specialized people. Maybe when you're big enough, you will have a full-time role of data evangelist. Who knows? What I'm saying is that there is no kind of right or wrong structure or right or wrong capability hiring. Just think about it before you. What you realize soon after you start is that they're like building the team, building an excellent BI team or data team isn't sufficient. It is a necessary condition, but it is not enough. You need a strong analytics community to support that team. You need kind of a certain horizontal capability of like the data literacy across the organization. Data literacy meaning kind of understanding what the numbers in general mean, and understanding the numbers in your context, knowing some of the key metrics and what they mean. You need to focus on training and educating those people. And initially, we focus on very much on the tooling side, but I think we need to we come to the stage where we need to expand our education to more of a best practices and what does good analytics look like. And finally, you need to engage with data producers. If you have data quality issues, or if you only take the data as it is right now, you will not be able to impact significantly your business in the long run. You kind of by joining all the dots between sort of data producers, data consumers, and your end users, is only then are you able to improve various stages of the process. So you need to be able to engage with people who don't necessarily have data in their title. When I was talking about leadership and thought leadership, one of the things that was made possible was introduction of a BI engineering team, and which was extremely like a force multiplier to our analytics team. So those they've had direct impact on the bottom line. So they've looked at the cost savings. They optimized a bunch of BigQuery, optimized a bunch of queries, and resulted in many thousands of pounds saved. They kind of renegotiated their supplier relationship and invested in the tooling that sped everybody on the BI team up. They also improved data quality. They're responsible for data architecture. Now, that wouldn't have been possible without the data leaders going, we need to invest in BI engineering. So typically, you would keep building on your portfolio of data analysts. And if you're lucky, some of those data analysts would be thinking or have time to think about step changes and these horizontal gains to be made. But in our case, it made sense, and it was a game changer. And lastly, I wanted to briefly cover processes. I think that's still something that we need to improve. You start off internally focused on the processes of within your team. You need to understand what are the the right operations, how to try processes, know how to monitor them, alert if things are not going well, or as you expect them to be. You you need to take the step out and then look at how those processes align with the processes of your stakeholders. For example, if you're operating in an agile way and your stakeholders aren't, how do you bridge that gap? And you need to think about company priorities and like wider in terms of organizational processes, because processes produce data and they also drive decisions. So those are the key elements of actually generating business value, right? Like this right decisions need to be made in order for business to be successful. So it is coming back to the processes, making sure those are robust and have right monitoring and analytics in place so that you know which part of the process is broken is key. So coming back to this, it's all a cycle that consists of people, processes, and tooling. And then it doesn't really stop at any given stage. And it all sort of contributes to this idea of self-serve, but it doesn't just stop at the self-serve. You're never quite finished. So I wouldn't worry about being driven out of the job just yet.